Hey, Errol.
Igor, how are you?
Thank you yourself.
Hey there, Roger.
Hey, good afternoon, good morning, everyone. Bless you.
Thank you.
So I think all of the active TSC members are here. Let's jump in. Who wants to take notes today and pull up the agenda? Who hasn't done it yet?
I think Igor nominated himself last time.
Yeah,
Sorry, I was muted. Yeah. So.
Where do we do that? Motion or just whatever?
It's all on GitHub. This is all doing it in public.
Sorry, didn't catch that.
It's in the GitHub, and yes, I will do it. Just a second. I'll just copy the previous one.
Yep, there should be an agenda file for this coming.
Yeah. Just give me 1 second. I'm making preparations. Okay, let me copy the previous agenda.
Sorry for those that just joined. We're just getting set up for the meeting.
Attendees: Christian, James, myself, Arl. Roger, Zach is here, Yusuf.
Just to get it out of the way while you're writing this down, Roger, so you said, you sent some information to me about your schedule over the next few weeks. Do you know if you're going to have a interim member step in for you?
Yeah, I won't be at the next meeting. I haven't heard back yet from the obvious choice for my replacement, so it would be Uri. Remember here, I'm going to guess he's not going to be available, and there's nobody else currently that would be sensible. So, but I will confirm before disappearing.
So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 people. 9 people, right?
Yep.
And previous action items. Do we have any previous action items?
Let's see. I can share my screen, and we can go over that. So very sorry. Okay. So I did follow up with Fidelity. They have some functionality related to authorization that isn't easy.
Christian, just one
sorry.
second. Let's just define the previous action items
Oh,
before
sure.
we start discussing them. Yeah, just do
Yep.
we have anything previously that should go to the previous
All right.
previous action
So
items?
you took James's item from the previous one, which was sorry.
Yeah, we done it.
Okay, that's
Creating
done.
the org repo. Igor did that.
Oh, right. Okay. Yep, that's done. So yeah, it's from that one. It was to follow up on Fidelity, some questions on backends, action item, the message CNCF to close off the application with now that Slack is theoretically unblocked. Putting together a plan for that.
Would you like an update about that?
I think that was all the action items.
Okay, so only follow up on the Fidelity item is the previous action items, right? Outside of the current agenda. Correct?
It was that and CNCF, but yes, I believe that's part of the current agenda.
What were you following up on with Fidelity? I'm confused.
So I had reached out because we were having discussions about backends as plugins and going down that route, and the TSC was curious what prompts people to heavily invest in the HTTP backend today, and what issues are they having that would make it easier for them with a pluggable backend system. Their response was that they need to do some custom auth and security, and the only way they can hack that together is through the HTTP backend, but they would strongly prefer doing something more robust. It's not necessarily anything actionable now, but at least we have an answer to that question from probably one of the larger users, at least that we know of the HTTP backend.
Again, should be backend require for some custom auth stuff, right? And what the preferred solution?
They didn't have a proposition. I was just trying to figure out what restrictions they had on why they weren't using something standard like the S3 backend or something along those lines.
Okay.
So just having that additional data point written down as that conversation evolves. So not too much.
Okay.
All right, CNCF.
Yeah, CNCF application and onboarding. So yesterday I got confirmation from the Linux Foundation that we are happy to go ahead with our plan of action, which is finally going to their Slack. And they've asked us to set a date. I'm looking at setting the date probably 2 weeks in the future. So we do it in 2 weeks. This gives people plenty of time. This sets to our original plan that we had before of start to migrate people now, give people notice, all of this. They said that the plan is okay. We should be able to migrate the users across, and they're happy to help us do this now. Slack wasn't going to give them the pro tier perpetually, and then the Slack sales team reverted on this. So Linux Foundation is staying with Slack for now. There is a small risk that if we migrate across to Slack, that Slack in 6 months, when they change their pricing again, could decide that it's evil, and a lot of faith has been lost. So we could be doing a second migration, but we'd be migrating everyone else in the CNCF.
Quick question: as soon as we migrated it to CNCF, it's like now CNCF responsibility, or we still kind of like administering our channels, and like in case of migration, we'll need to migrate them again.
This is one of the benefits: is they have their own admin and moderator teams that keep an eye on all of that.
Yep.
So we get to piggyback off that. That's one of the advantages of joining.
Sounds good.
So I will be putting out some messages. I just want to sign off on from the TSC that I'll be putting out messages to start the migration, and put out timelines tomorrow. It'll be fine to start that. Cool.
Okay.
That's
I took
all
a
that
note on
actually.
CNCF.
Say again, Igor.
I took a note on CNCF onboarding.
Cool.
So what we have today on the agenda, we have 1.11 planning, CNCF onboarding, we covered, current status, agenda notes process, what I think, whatever that means, and future of the DynamoDB logs for S3 backend. Zach just added it.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So which one do we want to tackle first?
I think just to get it out of the way, go through agenda notes and process. So ideally, we have the agenda posted, or at least the outline posted 3 days beforehand. What I would like to make sure that we all are on the same page with is our processes within a few days after this meeting. Whoever's been taking notes, they get the video recording, which I can send them the link to. Add that in, get it posted, and just put together even just a blank agenda for the next one, or something that pulls in the agenda items, the action items from the previous one. That way we can just start and hit the ground running. But it is part of our governance to have this published a few days ahead of time, and I just want to make sure that we just don't fall behind on this, and that we're all aware that the process is it's all on GitHub, it's all in the org repo. Just put the file there in the convention.
So you're proposing that whenever someone uploads the notes, they also upload the next agenda for the
It
meeting.
starts with the action items, yeah.
That works fine for me.
Yeah, sounds good.
Cool.
All right. 1.11 planning. So I just got out of a meeting with the maintainers. James did as well. And I think the milestone is up to date. It's still marked as pending. Sorry, I just looked at the wrong screen. Apologies for not being prepped for this. So this is our next milestone, marked as planning. We have a number of smaller items here. The biggest item on here is ephemeral resources right on the attributes. That's been moving along quite nicely. Andre has been making a lot of progress. I've been helping him a little bit here and there. But I was quite worried about this going into 1.11, but I think this, with the resources we have, this will allow us to have a relatively quick 1.11 cycle. We've got a few other things in here that we're trying to figure out, like direct support for conditional single instance resources. Technically fairly straightforward. It's more of a question on what we want to do language design-wise. So if the TSC has time, take a look at that issue and put your thoughts there. It's kind of in the weeds for, do we make a modification to HCL to allow a slightly different syntax, or do we just put it in the lifecycle?
Can you share the link to this issue that you just mentioned?
Sure, that is 1306. The problem is we can't just add a new attribute to the resource block because that may conflict with providers that already have that defined. So either we name it OpenTofu _ something, we put it in the lifecycle block, or we use some sort of new syntax here. So there's a conversation going on there.
Just to add to this one, because I don't think I was part of this conversation originally, we do have all the documentation for all the public providers, so we may be able to find a couple of keywords that are a bit free. I could do some analysis and I'll add something to the issue.
I'd be open to that. It does make me worried about providers that aren't public, but I know that number is relatively small. Let's see, a lot of these are just smaller issues. A lot of them are already in progress. The Azure RM backend improvements, there's one note is there's a lot of Azure backend issues that are related to each other. I think most of them will go away with the work that Lawrence is doing, which is excellent. That Troy, I think, has been helping with the auth side of getting that sorry for the background noise. Getting that sorted will be a huge load off all of our minds, I think. There's some documentation, some additional tooling. This one might be useful for Gruntwork or other tool authors. Tofu metadata dump is a tool we use within the registry to provide more detailed information about inspecting a configuration, to help us provide type information, documentation, module inputs, outputs, all that fun sort of stuff. We've been improving Tofu Show in the past release or so, and I think this could be kind of subsumed into that work. So that's something that a few engineers are working on. But if there's information you'd like to get out of inspecting OpenTofu configuration today that you can't currently, this is probably one of the issues. This or an issue that gets created out of it would be a good place to put it.
Can you put the link to the issue that you're discussing?
Yes, sorry.
To give a little background about this one, I think, Igor, you might find this one interesting, as working on library.tf. Previously, people were using Terraform config inspect to go and extract module metadata, and we want to have an OpenTofu alternative that understands OpenTofu syntax.
Perfect.
So, honestly, I think it's going to be a fairly small release given what we've got on our plate so far. It's mostly catching up with ephemeral and read-only resources and a few other things. I think the biggest user-facing win that people have been asking for from both us and for Terraform for a while is the direct support for conditional single-instance resources. My suspicion is people don't actually care what the syntax looks like; they just care that it exists. Because right now, it's just annoying having to do a ternary expression within a count in order to enable or disable a resource. It's just making that a top-level concern. I think as far as what the maintainers will be spending time on is there's a lot of ideas we've had that came out of the hackathon, but there's also, so in a previous meeting, I don't think the action item got pulled forward. Actually, I'm going to stop there and ask if anyone has any questions on what's been presented so far. Okay. So there's a few. Yeah, sorry. As I was saying, there's a few things from the hackathon that are hopefully coming to fruition. I have been working on an RFC. I don't know, you'll probably have the link. So mentioning it. This RFC for an alternate execution model. This is going to be a long, interesting technical one that discusses a lot of technical trade-offs with the current graph-based design and some potential ways of kind of sidestepping that and moving forward. There's a lot. I don't want to get. Sorry.
This will not be like part of 1.11, right?
No. So given that 1.11 is theoretically a smaller and less intense release than previous ones, this gives the maintainer team some time to look at what comes next. This is one of the things that's on our list. The other is, so if we take a look at the top issues, implement the stack concept is a big one. Obviously, we're not going to implement Terraform stacks because that's not what OpenTofu is. It's a whole different model. And stacks is to the best of my understanding, a tool to make Terraform work, to add more power for Terraform within their particular cloud offering. And I'm just going to leave it there. But there's an underlying question of what do people actually need out of OpenTofu? Is it better integration with other tools? Is it the ability to have more powerful workspaces? Is it wanting to manage things in a different way? Do people want to be running much larger configurations that have more of a concept of different subsections of that infrastructure? There's a lot of issues that need to be pulled together, which is what was assigned to Roger a few weeks ago. I think someone else will need to take that on given his PTO. But I sincerely think we need to have someone on the TSC take the time to find all of the related issues to stacks, to workspaces, to backends as plugins, to what users are trying to extend the tool into, and to start having that conversation. And it's not just doing that initial upfront work, but figuring out how we have that conversation with the community and how to move forward with those sorts of initiatives. Because we're kind of stuck here, being blunt. It's probably if I had to put my finger on it, it's the reason that we don't have anything big planned for 1.11. Is because we haven't been able to make any progress here. So I guess my query to the rest of the TSC is, given that there's a lot of forward-thinking, both user interface and architecture questions, all kind of wrapped up into how do we think people are looking to use OpenTofu moving forward? How do we want to distill that into a conversation we can have?
I mean, to play into perhaps the expected role, Gruntwork and TerraGrunt, obviously we have recently released TerraGrunt Stacks, which is a thoughtful implementation of how this works, or more specifically of how to orchestrate Terraform OpenTofu at scale for problems that have sort of a horizontal replication nature. I think it's a generally available, perfectly serviceable solution to that particular problem. I think really my issue with this ticket is it's proposing a solution, not describing a problem, right?
Yeah.
And so I can describe, I think, a range of problems where TerraGrunt Stacks, a range of problems that are common and real that TerraGrunt Stacks solves. It's unclear whether this person and the people in this ticket are having those same problems, in which case I would, of course, recommend them use TerraGrunt Stacks, or if there are other problems, for example, like they're having trouble using workspaces because of nuances of how the workspace implementation is, and there's more of an opportunity for OpenTofu there. So, if I was dictator of OpenTofu, I would close this ticket with a comment of, like, it's a proposal of a solution, not a description of a problem, and please reopen new tickets with more details as to what are the problems you're actually having, what are you trying to do, and then we can investigate whether there are existing solutions to those problems or whether we need to innovate new solutions.
Yeah, so
I
think overall I agree with us. I mean, this needs to be what the issue is. I think the main other point, though, is as vendors here, we might hear from people, from customers, say we want stacks, whatever. And so that might be the other end of this one. I'll say that personally, I haven't heard that. I'm not sure what's up with stacks with Terraform and when that's going to happen, but I don't think that's valid enough reason to do this. I mean, if people actually want this as, okay, we want the exact same spec, then all right, we need, it depends on what the community wants, right? So I mostly agree with Zach here. There's also TerraGrunt Stacks, something we can recommend. We need to understand. I'm not too familiar with the difference. I mean, with what, I don't know, Terraform HashiCorp Stacks offers compared to this. So
Just Christian, sorry, just to make sure, like we started as 1.11 planning and now drift into stacks. So let's just try to focus on the agenda, and then we can have like all additional conversations separate. Otherwise, like we'll go to the red holes and won't discuss what we actually planned for the day.
Okay. I just wanted to say the reason that it drifted is that we've had trouble planning 1.11 because of a lack of this sort of direction. I would like to have, I'm happy to jump into Zach's, the last action item, which is Zach's. But I think that we need to have a conversation. So we need to just figure out how to have this conversation so we don't just have a no-op release for 1.12 as well. Like there's a lot of issues that tie into this that we need to start looking at, and we're not.
as a proposal, do we tie this in as a TSC item to have closed off and defined through the 112 release? To put a time box on it?
I think we need to figure out how to have this conversation within the next few weeks if possible. And I would like to have something that comes out of that so we have an idea for what we're doing for 112.
Yeah, that's pretty much
I think the overlap here is that when we're saying a 111 plan, what we're actually saying is what are the plans for the next 2 months or so, and that involves some of this discussion. So we need to be aware that it's not always just development on issues, but also there is looking at things like a product manager and figuring out the Matt Gowie issue of breaking up the Teralith that Christian raised a minute ago and implementing the stack concept and how that works alongside TerraGrunt and Atlantis and all the tacos. And we've got to have a lot of discussions. I actually propose, I think we already have one such group of people starting, but I suppose we may need some working groups soon where we get people together in a Slack channel and we start having some discussions and meetings and bring in people who are interested in this area and are very vocal in this area. I think that's our best way around doing this. Listen to the community. But this needs to happen alongside 111, ready for 112. Okay. But yeah, it's not part of our 111 plan to do something initially for stacks. It is that we're going to be discussing it. Same with the execution layer that Christian was talking about earlier, I believe.
Yep.
Is that it for 111? Does anyone think that we're missing something? I should just check.
I might be naive. What didn't ephemeral values make it past the cut?
Yes.
Yep, it's
Okay.
it's going in. It's
about
already
80% complete?
I think the way I was just talking with Andre earlier, I think we're 80% of the way through a Pathfinder. And then there's going to be more detailed, more comprehensive review once the future branch has all of the subcomponents merged in. But he's been making phenomenal progress on that. So to the point where a fair portion of it's already functional in a reasonable fashion.
So the next agenda item is future of the DynamoDB logs for S3 backend, introduced by Zach.
Yep, this one's me. So we were talking about the new DynamoDB lists or S3 exclusive locks internally at Gruntwork the other day, and I found myself reading the Terraform changelog for S3 based locking for the S3 backend, and Hashi is very explicit that their intention is to eliminate the DynamoDB based locking in the S3 in their S3 backend at some point. So like the current status quo is S3 locks are experimental, and DynamoDB locks are deprecated, and they're going to stabilize S3 based locks and then get rid of Dynamo. So the question before the group here is, are we doing the same?
The last time we had this conversation among the maintainers, we didn't see the significant maintenance burden in keeping the DynamoDB based locks. I think especially because, well, actually that's irrelevant. But I believe as of now, if memory serves, it is out of experimental for them. And I believe that's why we never marked it as experimental in OpenTofu. Because it's given that they released it and didn't have any issues with likely, again, we're using the same API. They didn't run into any production issues using that API. We assumed that what's being attempted is reasonably stable.
My understanding literally an hour ago when we were in the ticket triage meeting is that we are keeping the DynamoDB backend and we are saying that our S3 locking, native locking is stable.
Correct.
So should we explicitly state this somewhere? Maybe we need to update our change log and go and say that the DynamoDB is not going anywhere. Just so it's written down.
I'm just curious, what is the intellectual, I mean, other than the maintenance costs isn't that high, is there an intellectual reason for maintaining both?
Giving people
I think
options.
it's probably like backward compatibility. For the net new users, I'm not sure that it makes sense to use DynamoDB. It just doesn't give you anything extra. But there are like army of people who historically use DynamoDB, which just put additional burden on them for like migration. It's like not necessarily like a good idea, unless we can come up with some like behind the scenes native migration when they don't need to change anything, just S3 magically working. But again, like I'm not sure what the time. Also, like I like the DynamoDB logs. They're stable. They work. Why we need to like separately announce that like we keeping them? There are two methods, both of them documented.
Just because HashiCorp is deprecating them and explicitly stating it, so we should say we're doing something different.
Okay.
Just so people don't lump us together. Yusuf, you've had your hand up for a while.
Just a general question. Is there going to be any guidance regarding like whether one is preferred over the other for new users? Any considerations regarding like performance costs, that kind of thing that a user would want to know about when they're evaluating the choice?
We should do that if it doesn't exist in our documentation already.
The preferred one is a native S3 locking via conditional rights. This can be enabled by using, this is the first thing, the first paragraph. This can be enabled by setting this thing. Another option is to use DynamoDB locking. Yep.
Yeah, so just to clarify, it says that it's preferred and it says that there's another option, but there's no indication of like why or like what the like technical trade-offs are. It's a perfectly valid answer to say like you don't want to provide that, or like it's that's being abstracted away, that decision. But the user might want to know, am I sacrificing cost or performance by staying on DynamoDB?
I think it's valid that we open an issue just to document that a little bit more explicitly. I can take that action item.
And I think what Yusuf's not mentioning is we did that surface analysis the other day internally, and I think the answer is they both cost almost nothing, but S3 might cost a smidge more, like fractions of a penny. And in theory, Dynamo's APIs are slightly faster. So like from, like, you know, purely a min-max perspective, Dynamo is cheaper and faster. But from a practical perspective, you know, it doesn't seem like there's any difference.
It's orders of magnitude of speed difference to actually refreshing resources and things like this, right? So, but we should put it in there. If people are asking this question, we should put it in there. So
I added action item that James will open an issue and clarify this in the docs.
Given that TerraGrunt has some information having done this analysis, would you be open to dropping that information there so we can at least include some references to it in the docs?
I don't know that TerraGrunt has special information. I just like I compared the pricing of S3 and Dynamo and went, okay, well, per API call, it's cheaper to use Dynamo, and with respect to latency, it's Dynamo has lower latency than S3 API calls. I didn't do anything fancier than that, and we don't have like telemetry or anything in TerraGrunt that says users are suffering from switching to block files or whatever.
the other thing we have to remember versus HashiCorp's Terraform is that we support multiple different S3 backends, and S3 backend for HashiCorp Terraform is AWS S3. Whereas for OpenTofu, that is S3 compatible backends. So this might be DigitalOcean's or whoever else is out there, OCI, Oracle, they have one that's S3 compatible. And so we should bear that in mind. So
Look, we just unintentionally added a reason why to migrate from Terraform to Tofu. Like if you don't want to update your 300 workspaces with S3 locking, you just switch to Tofu and you're good.
Yeah. Anything else to
So
discuss about DB? I know you've got.
If it's still not on OpenTofu, then it's time to switch.
I know the Terragrunt guys, you recently reworked some of your locking stuff so that you can support the OpenTofu locking. Is that all working correctly? Maybe this isn't the place to ask that. I will.
Happy to share. I mean, we're running it continuously in our integration testing against everything in Terragrunt, and it's working perfectly. Users are reporting improved performance using OpenTofu native provider caching. It's currently experimentally supported in Terragrunt, and we're going to be rolling out like little tips to tell users that they should consider switching to it if they're using OpenTofu. If they're on Terraform, they can get a performance boost by switching over to OpenTofu if they're using the provider cache server. So it's right now we're in the phase of getting users to try it out and give feedback before we mark it as generally available. There was one user who reported like an issue with using the native provider cache server or caching, but it wasn't reproducible. So they're just randomly reporting in Discord. I can try to surface. Oh, and they said that they would open an issue in OpenTofu. So if you haven't seen that yet, I will follow up with them.
We can have a look. If not, I'm in the Terragrunt Discord. I can find it. Anything else on DynamoDB locking and the future of it?
That's pretty much concludes our agenda for today.
I had one other agenda item that I added quickly in the Google Meet chat because I forgot about it. So it's about the OpenTofu blog. I have been talking to a company that's been quite vocal about their switch to OpenTofu. They were interested in doing an interview about their migration and putting it on the OpenTofu blog. Does anyone think the OpenTofu blog should just stay technical and about our releases, or are they happy to have migration stories on there as well? I think I just wanted to just raise it to the TSC just in case anyone was against it. Zach says +1 for migration stories. Cool. Roger's agreeing. Aryl's nodding. I think we're good. All right. I'll put that out to review for people before it goes up. So, yep.
Sorry, I was busy taking notes. So yeah, also like agree. Like all stories that help to reinforce the viability of OpenTofu and migrations and success stories, I think we should post them.
Cool. Anything else on the agenda?
I wrote down that I'd like to continue the conversation on how we're going to move forward, like what our next steps are for trying to have some of these larger conversations. But I think before that, we could open it up to non-TSC members if they have any agenda items they'd like to bring up.
Just small updates about the Azure RM backend. Things are going extremely well. All the authentication methods are implemented, save half of the OIDC one, which I'm currently testing. And testing for everything is going extremely well. I'll be able to give a proper demo, and I'm excited to start working with Troy on testing the auth methods more thoroughly.
Awesome. Thank you, Lawrence.
Oh, I apologize. Can I sneak one last one in? My role at Gruntwork is changing a bit. So I've got some additional responsibilities lately, and I'd like to kick the gears in motion, whatever the process is as appropriate, to have Yusuf take my place on the TSC, if that's at all possible. And so I wanted to, I don't recall the exact details of what the governance doc says as far as TSC membership and who votes on what and when, but I wanted to bring that up.
You know what? I don't think we covered this specific case in the governance. Unless you want to count it as a voluntary resignation and then we all vote in Yusuf on that one.
That would make me feel good if we wanted to do that. I'd be happy to do that.
I think we could even vote Yusuf in before Zach resigns. I think, given our affiliation rules, having both of you from Gruntwork is permissible. I think it's just once we get beyond a certain point.
Okay, so can I motion to call for a vote then to have Yusuf join the TSC with the expectation that 30 seconds later I will resign?
All good.
Yep.
Okay.
Congratulations.
I think we have a quorum. All right. I'd like to formally inform the TSC of my resignation from the TSC in favor of Yusuf, who has just voted onto the board, onto the committee. And thank you, everybody, for being so amenable and amicable about this process.
So what I might ask, Zach or Yusuf, could either of you, we maintain a list of the TSC somewhere? Just swap around the names in that. Christian or Igor can point you in the right direction, because I think they remember where that is, and I don't.
I'll handle this.
Okay.
Should be in
Thank
the
you, Igor.
contributing file. Yep.
Christian, regarding your item that you wanted to add quickly about talking more about having discussions around big initiatives, I think we already have this one channel that Roger has set up around big initiatives. We should try this out for 2 weeks, and also we can talk about the idea of working groups. I'll propose the idea of working groups for the next session, and we can go from there. Does that sound okay?
I think so. Yeah, we could have an internal discussion on how we want to build working groups, but I'd like to have as much of these discussions once we figure out how we want to manage them with the option for public participation, even if there's a select group of people who are nominated to drive that discussion.
So meeting is adjourned.
Yeah.
Thanks. Thanks everyone. So I'll publish the notes and everything that discussed within the next, probably by the end of the day today, latest tomorrow. Quick question. It's usually PR and then somebody will review it and then merge. Yeah. Okay. So I'll make a PR and then we'll post it in the Slack to review it and publish.
I'll be able to DM you the recording shortly.
Sounds good. Thanks everyone.
Thanks all.
Thanks.
Bye.